Hey minions, welcome to Crank It Up. I'm Jim Price, and on this episode of King of the Hill, I'm going to be talking about the critter champion of the Itty Critters. The Itty Critters are an unusual faction in their structure, with 6 unique Power 2 minions. Once per turn, the critter champion can use her talent to search for a minion of Power 2 or less and play it on her base. But the second portion of her ability is where she differs from the Venus Mantrap. If you control the minion at the end of the turn, you will place it on the bottom of your deck. The critter champion essentially turns your minions of Power 2 or less into action versions of themselves. Unless the minion is removed from play, which includes having the base scored, the minion will return to the bottom of the deck, which means that very little will persist from turn to turn. The only other option is to relinquish control. This can make the Itty Critters difficult to use, especially since the extra minion must be played on the same base, but it also opens some interesting opportunities. Let's look at the control scenario first. While there are several ways to lose control of a minion, it is much harder to voluntarily give it, with the ignobles being the best example. The Sneaky Squire can give control to play an extra minion, which would allow it to persist for another turn. As the active player, you can choose the order of effects, and since the end of the turn is a phase, you can use the Foot of the King to take back control after you've processed the critter champion. As a result, you can play 2 extra minions per turn with the critter champion and the Sneaky Squire. While the Sneaky Squire must be played on the same base, the extra minion he provides does not, which allows you to advance on 2 or more bases. This extra minion has no restriction either, so a critter coach can be played, which can then play another 2-power minion, which can be another Sneaky Squire, and you can create some interesting chains of minion play this way. The other primary target for a control-based strategy is Flower Child of the Elves. The minion swap does not have to occur on the same base, and this can be viewed as trading up for a 3-powered minion or less that will remain in play. If you can steal a strong 3-powered minion with a good ongoing ability or talent, you can take control of each copy as they are played turn by turn, since you have 3 Flower Childs. This doesn't seem as good as the ignoble combo, but it can provide value. Perhaps the minion stolen has greater value than the net gain from playing a different 2-powered minion. But what about non-control situations? In order to evaluate Critter Champion effectively, you need to consider how the total effect of her ability compares with other king minions. The Critter Champion shouldn't be viewed as playing an extra minion, but rather having a versatile effect provided by that extra minion. Let's look at the Itty Critters themselves first. Calicoin can provide a power counter every turn on another minion at the same base, perhaps the Critter Champion. Since Calicoin may retreat at the end of the turn, this combination seems very similar to Air Doctor, with the added bonus of having +2 power from Calicoin itself when you're ready to break the base. However, Air Doctor does not have any geographic restrictions on where to place the counter, so this combination is not strictly better. In fact, most of the Itty Critter effects apply to the current base only. This includes Shell Shock, who can destroy a minion or Power 2 or less here. Shell Shock plays very similar to Apricot of the Princesses, whose only restriction is to destroy another player's minion. In this respect, Shell Shock may be better since it can destroy your own minions on VP farming bases, but unfortunately, Shell Shock cannot destroy itself. Tadpore, who can move a minion from here to another base, doesn't have much of a comparable and is closest to Monster Tornado or the opposite of Snow White. Krakatoad can grant another minion here +2 power, regardless of owner, and it seems similar to Leader 2 with a geographic restriction. Leader 2 cannot give an opponent minion the power for traps on ninja bases, but that's probably okay. As for the other 2, Floo Fairy can draw a card like an Enchantress, which is always good. Surprisingly, the only card with the talent to simply draw a card without restriction is the Wizard Titan Arcane Protector. Leafaroo can shuffle a card from your discard pile into your deck, and is another version of the Cleric's Holy Roller, but has no king minion comparable. Critter Champion's ability forces the extra minion to be played on the same base, which may lead players to use her as a base finisher, but she doesn't have to be. Minions that won't make good targets will have ongoing abilities. If you notice, none of the 6 itty critters have them, but some are still more useful, particularly those with persistent effects. But what are other factions that can provide long-term value, particularly on multiple bases? Normally I don't like to mention the robots as a suggested pairing, since I can do that almost every video, but there are some truly great combinations here. Naturally, the Zapbot would not remain in play, but the minion it plays would. With enough minions on the base, the Microbot Guard can function like a Ninja Master that you can summon every turn, which is very powerful. If you play the Microbot Fixer, you can play another minion as an extra minion in addition to your regular minion, both of which can be on different bases. But interestingly, you can use your Microbot Alpha as either a multi-base combination or a way to spread the Microbot Fixer's power to non-microbots on other bases. You can spread its power, break a different base, send Microbot Alpha back, and then repeat the combination as you see fit. I also don't like to mention aliens as a pairing, but they have the same Venus Man-Trap Invader combo, only better. You can play an Invader with your regular minion play, and use the Critter Champion to summon a Collector to return the Invader. As a result, your turn provides no power creep and no loss of collectors, because it goes to the bottom of your deck. You should never draw this minion unless you do additional shuffling, so the combination can be repeated as long as Critter Champion is in play. And if the base is close to breaking, you can play an Abduction to move Critter Champion to a new base and repeat. Other than moving Critter Champion, you still have your action every turn, so you can throttle the game accordingly. I still prefer Killer Plant Aliens because of their non-invader combos, but this is still pretty great. Playing against aliens and someone has left out their invader? Why destroy it when you can copy it? Grab a copycat to continually use the powerful ability of the invader or any other powerful minion. The Innsmouth have a really interesting combination because the Critter Champion can summon a locals who can retrieve more locals from your deck and put them into your hand. This will gradually thin your deck and get you closer to your Innsmouth cards that can play extra minions with the same name. Because you are constantly cycling through your deck, burying cards on the bottom won't be as much of an issue because you don't have to sacrifice your normal minion play to keep the cycle going. You can always use Leafaroo to force a shuffle when you don't like the results. If you have the Cthulhu expansion, you've essentially reserved a base for yourself because Bayaki would cause every other player on that base to draw a Madness card every turn. That's just cruel. You'll either force players to try to break that base as quickly as possible, or avoid it entirely. Alternatively, the researcher of the Miskatonic University can give you the Madness card you need for the professor to play an extra minion and an extra action every turn. You may find yourself with a lot of Madness in your discard pile, so be sure to manage that carefully. If you have the Munchkin expansion, you can reserve a base in a different manner. The Taunter can play a monster on a base every turn, continually adding to the breakpoint. Your opponents will not want to be on a base with so many monsters where they would be stranded. The action Ruckus can destroy all the monsters there on a single turn, so you can strike when you deem appropriate. If you have Star Player on that base, you'd gain a ton of power counters, and Tadpore can be summoned to send it to another base. You can score the monster base or another base by yourself, and perhaps even both because of the drastic change in power and breakpoint. There are a lot more examples of really creative things you can do, and there isn't enough time to cover them all. I encourage you to think about your own unusual synergies, particularly ones that opponents would not expect. The interesting takeaway from the Critter Champion is that if you cannot retain the presence of minions you summon, you need to use that to your advantage in terms of replayability, and there are a surprising number of ways to do that. Without this concept, the itty critters simply cannot make an impact, and they are truly driven by their king minion, the Critter Champion. What's your favorite minion to summon? Let me know in the comments. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's shut it down.